Well, guys, this man absolutely crushed it on the broadcast of the Davis Roach Jr. boxing match just this past weekend. One half of Morning Combat with my good friend LTBC just makes it look easy. Now, as we prepare to go tip to tip, they call him BC, but I call him BBC because Big Brian Campbell is in the house. Do your victory tour, BC. What an incredible job this weekend you did.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be on this show and have my bag fluffed up by you. But in all seriousness, wild night at the fights in Brooklyn. But yes, I am overjoyed to have been part of the team and get to feel that electricity in that arena. Chuck Mindenhall and his young son over my shoulder in the crowd. What a night to be alive, right?
Chuck's son be like, you suck, BC. Let me ask you this, man. Obviously, a massive moment in your career. I'm so happy for you, man. You did such a good job. But break down this fight for me, man. Did someone get screwed here? Did the wrong man win? Were the wrong cards called? Was the right man? Should someone else have had their hand raised? How do you feel about it days out after you were there live as you watched it happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wrongs ultimately in the way this played out. I mean, what was right was it being another sellout crowd, people showing up to see Gervonta Tank Davis, a boxing superstar. And for the most part, it was pretty darn entertaining. But, and that's the big but, we're obviously hyper focused on what happened in round 9 when Gervonta Davis, who would tell me after the fight in the ring in one of the most bizarre answers to a question that he got hair grease in his eyes from the braid job that he received just a few days before, took a knee, turned his back to the action. Referee Steve Willis started to count the mandatory 8 count that you would get for doing that, right? We've seen this in boxing before. Floyd Mayweather, by the way, the only time he was legally knocked down in his career, early in his career against Carlos Hernandez, did the same thing, only he had broken his right hand, took a voluntary knee, waited out the 8 seconds, got back up and continued to fight. In this case, though, not only did Davis not get penalized with a knockdown, he was allowed to go to his own corner, have his eyes rubbed with a towel while referee Steve Willis was trying to figure out what was going on. And then Willis starts counting stops. We could hear him on the microphone he's wearing saying, you got to be careful. This looks too much like a knockdown. Well, it was a knockdown. So not only was it a blown call by Willis, a blown call by the New York State Athletic Commission, which did have instant replay rights, but reportedly only has it in a certain window after a foul or situation occurs, and they were unable to access the feed in time. I mean, it sounds like a bunch of BS that's only multiplied by the fact that the New York State Athletic Commission has not been returning any comments or answers to the media in questions. They do not regularly make their officials available for questioning. So what we had in the end was an interesting fight, so much closer than the betting oddsman predicted, with Davis being a minus 1,600 favorite, despite the fact that these two were amateur rivals and Lamont Roach Jr. had claimed all along, I'm not afraid of Tank. I know his tells. I know his backstory. I grew up with him. I'm going to be in this fight. He was, but he had to settle for a majority draw. And obviously, if that round had been scored 10-8 for Roach, like it should have been under the laws, under the rules, he could have won a split decision, a majority decision, what have you. He should have won. Now, me, I was scoring it unofficially at ringside. I had it around 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3 for Roach. I do, by the way, have no issue if somebody scored it at a draw like 2 of the judges did, or if somebody even had it for Tank Davis very slightly, because there were enough rounds where there wasn't a ton of activity, because Davis is used to making his opponent do the work early while he reads them. Only Roach, I thought, had a very smart game plan in trying to force Tank to take the lead and not be the counterpuncher. It left a lot of rounds up in the air. But who performed better? Who performed better compared to expectations? Both questions are answered by Lamont Roach Jr., who deserves an immediate rematch. Unfortunately, was robbed of multiple millions that he would have received from pulling this upset. It's still going to be a big event when they run it back. Hopefully next year, hearing people speak as soon as possibly May, they could do this. The WBA is going to rule that a rematch is called for. It certainly is. It's just disappointing for Lamont Roach, who did everything asked of him, put his name out there in the world, and came up not empty, right? Got the draw, will get another opportunity. but was robbed of somewhat of a masterpiece in a fight that most people felt he had no business being in there. Now, look, those in boxing knew he could compete. Tank's team knew he could compete, but to have odds that wide and to have a performance like that, you deserve to be rewarded for it.
Oh, man, that's one of those ones where you talk to your friends in the gym when you're 80. You know, I should have had that win. You know, that always happens in boxing. Who wins the rematch, BC?
You know, it depends. It depends because I think there's 3 central storylines that come out of this fight, and really only 2 are being talked about. One, the New York State Athletic Commission's response and handling of these issues. And by the way, Steve Willis, normally top-notch referee. 2, Roach overperforming and rightfully being the story. But the real story is like what's going on with Gervonta Davis. And, you know, we know his history of outside the ring issues. He's been trying to clean it up. And I think we all knew that coming into this fight, he had oddly been talking a lot about retirement and, you know, talking good things like, I want to go to therapy. I want to be a better father, but I don't want to do it right now yet because I don't want to lose this fire, this competitive passion. Well, I think we're all starting to question if he had lost that competitive passion coming into this fight. And this is not to take away what Roach did. This is just to say that was not the Tank Davis we know. That was a Tank Davis that when things got hard and when he realized that Roach wasn't going to go away from one big shot, kind of had some questionable decision-making in there. He would say afterwards that he lost track of the rounds. He was spending a lot of time arguing with the referee and not looking at Roach, even got hit twice during those sequences. And then you take into account the post-fight excuse making. He had a smile on his face talking about his braids. It almost seemed as if he wasn't that sore about a draw, about nearly losing his unbeaten record. So if this is the wake-up call that Gervonta Davis, you know, the biggest star in U.S. boxing now that Canelo has signed with Saudi Arabia, unquestionably, he's made a ton of money. But if he can't take this as the scare that it really was and come back and leave no doubt in training camp, although I think he did come in good shape, and really have the right mindset to get the job done in the rematch, then this could be a turning point moment in his career. I think you got to give Lamont Roach the respect. Even though he was the 130-pound champion moving up to a lightweight 5 pounds, he was the bigger fighter in there. He took Tank's best shots. He was brave enough to counter, never really was too reckless, really fought a smart, safe fight. Not safe. It was safe enough to not get knocked out, but a smart fight. So the idea of who wins the rematch really, in my opinion, surrounds the mental status of Tank Davis. Let's not forget he was arguing in the corner with his 2 cornermen, Calvin Ford, his lifelong trainer, Barry Hunter, who he brought in to sort of first consult, but now take over. There's a lot of questions about what's really going on with Tank. And although he should be favored in the rematch, just like he was rightfully favored in the first fight, he's got to realize now what he's really up against in there and what Lamont Roach is capable of doing. I think the best case scenario here for Roach, PBC, is that they're going to get another fight, that there's demand for it right away, and hopefully Roach will get a straight up shot here to once again try to make his name in the sport.
Hot rivalry, though, which is good for the sport of boxing, especially in the US, right? Because you mentioned a lot of fighters are going overseas. So it's good to have that sort of rivalry to keep people interested in it. But, you know, it's interesting, man. It's like a D-level Hallmark boxing movie, like stuff happening in real life that you're like, this would never happen. His hair, he's arguing with the guys, the draw, like, but this is life in boxing sometimes. And it's stranger than fiction, stranger than a John Cena heel turn at Elimination Chamber. Am I right, BC?
Oh my God, we saw that. Mauro Ranallo and I, who were calling the fight for Amazon Prime for PBC, we saw that Cena turn happen on Twitter. We actually mentioned on the broadcast. I thought for sure that would be the biggest storyline in combat sports this weekend, but I think Tank and referee Steve Willis were trying. And by the way, I just wanted to add one nugget. Last year, Amanda Serrano, the great decorated women's champion, actually had to pull out of a fight the day of for the same reason as Tank. She got her hair done. The liquid in it leaked into her eyes. She was blinded for a brief point. So I'm not trying to say that didn't matter. It didn't happen. But you have to agree with me. The way Tank responded to all this was just bizarre. Is he embarrassed? Does he not care? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves.
Also, what are we doing here with our hair if we can blind ourselves when we sweat?
I know.
Do we need regulations around this? What are they putting? Acid in there? What is happening with this hair? Someone has to figure this out. Is someone
get a $10
I struggle with my hair?
Yeah, come on.
I wish I could have something put in my hair so it burns my eyes. Just looking at my hair burns my eyes in the morning. Let me ask you this, man. UFC 313, we're just around the corner.
Yes.
our good friend LT, he usually rates the card for me. I want to get your thoughts on it. What would you give this card out of 10, man, if you had to?
We're going on a 10 scale. All right. I'm looking at it right now in front of me on my screen.
Try not to.
Don't
look too close, BC, but
I had a lot of hardcores, rip me when I ripped this, saying, come on, BC, enough of the complaining about the matchmaking. This is not that bad. Great main event. Pretty damn good replacement co-main event considering. But dude, this is like a 6. It's like a 5.9, a 6. I mean, it is where we are in 2025. The TKO global takeover, the let's pull out every single dollar we absolutely can. Let's have a fight card every weekend, which I obviously don't hate. I love the UFC schedule in terms of the activity, but we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't have majors anymore unless it's Abu Dhabi. I mean, 314 in Miami looks like a major. Well done right there. But this is disappointing to me. It is absolutely a must-see main event. But the way that the quality of cards, particularly in Las Vegas, which this card will be in, the way that it's just gone down the tubes of a boxing type approach of, hey, we only need a good main event or a good main event and a decent secondary fight. I'm not here saying we have to go back to 2016. It was a different time. Conor and Ronda were still lingering. Brock Lesnar came back. They sold the company for $4 billion. They put forth a level of matchmaking and ambition that we've never seen before. We know that the engine has changed, the goal, the vision, because of the ESPN deal, because of how important it is in the TKO era to, sign these government contracts with major cities. Those are becoming the real customers, right? If you read enough MMA Draw in your email inbox like I do. But I will say, man, always good to give them one stinker pay-per-view a year. Okay, we got to do Nunes, Pennington. Okay, give us that one stinker. Oh, you got to go to Brazil after 300. It's not going to be that deep. Okay, 301. I get it. But this is happening a little bit too much lately, and I hate to see it on the pay-per-view level for sure.
If Arman Tsarukyan is the guy that gets chosen to fight Justin Gaethje, how different of a conversation are we having right now? Just from a perspective of the rest of the card, maybe not the hottest, but now we've got this hot storyline for 155. And what happens if Arman comes in there at 160 and does the good that he kind of missed out on when he had to pull out last second? And Gaethje, and where is he at? Do you think that kind of shakes things up to a level where at least it gets it to a point where we can go home with this card after a couple of beers on a Friday night?
Because to me, there's sort of two things that can make up a great card. Depth in terms of quality of fights, storylines you care about, names you care about, even if some of these names are mismatched. If you got a lot of names on the card, that's depth. Or just give me 2 to 3 really good fights that I can't miss, right? That I have to pay for, that I have to stay up for. To me, again, on paper, Gaethje versus anybody, does that work? Yes. Gaethje versus Fiziev, the first fight was interesting. Does that work in theory? Well, yes. But if that's your second best fight on this pay-per-view card, and maybe there was an opportunity to upgrade it more than it was. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I actually was a little bit upset when it was first announced Hooker Gaethje. Not that I didn't expect it to be the action classic it would have been. I was just sort of like, man, do you see the lack of depth below that? Maybe we could have had a bigger punch in that co-main slot, even though that one did have, top 10 ranking, title picture considerations. If they put in Tsarukyan, to your point, it would have, I think, fixed any negative talk about this card. It would have really upgraded that co-main to a fight that truly matters. To be fair, like the Hooker one was on, in theory, I think we all would have loved a number of substitutions from, Ilia to Poirier, which wasn't going to happen on short notice. Charles Oliveira, heck, even Dustin Poirier, who did raise his hand, if they had, shipped him in there and rescheduled his retirement tour, I think it would have mattered. Now, a lot of fans disagree with me. They think Fiziev versus Gaethje 2 is more than fine. It's not that I dislike the fight. But also like, hey, even though it's last minute, Fiziev hasn't fought in 2 years. He's coming off a 2-fight losing skid. Like it's Gaethje won the first time. It is sort of what it is. Gaethje's also coming off of a devastating loss. So in the end, it's not the end of the world. But yes, it would have been a little bit sexier if they went Tsarukyan. Heck, I even talked myself into being okay with Moicano coming off of that flat performance last minute for the title. If they would have given him this recharging opportunity to come back in there and reclaim the hot streak he was on. This is nothing against Fiziev. I'm going to be talking to him in a bit. I'm excited. I like the guy. But yeah, I just feel like all in all, what are we really talking about this fight card? Well, we're talking about Alex Pereira maybe facing the toughest style matchup to date atop his run at 205, probably, right? I want to be talking about more, though. And it's not that I don't have that hardcore bone that can't identify some more storylines on here, but it left it a little bit flat. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, again, you want to put a pay-per-view in a city that doesn't normally get one, and it's more about the idea that, hey, they're going to come and see whoever we put out there. That happens. This is Las Vegas. This is March. That used to mean something.
Imagine the Ilia Tapura was stepping in there saying, hey, I want that title. I'm fighting Gaethje, and then I'm calling for that belt. Now, that would change everything around, but of course, it's not really the era that we're in here. But what are the guys fighting for, BC? Fiziev and Justin Gaethje. Break that down for me. What's on tap for the winner? Fiziev, a fight with Dan Hooker? Gaethje? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah,
what do you think is on tap here?
You know, it's certainly the idea of eliminating one from the title picture and elevating the other, which is not nothing. And I think for Gaethje, who, you know, had as devastating a loss at 300 as possible against Max Holloway, which really started right with that sort of freak shot that Holloway hit at the end of the first round that changed the bout in so many ways. It's an opportunity at redemption for sure. But to your point, I think the consequences, the stakes have been aggressively downgraded as well. And it's not that Fiziev wasn't in the fight and or winning against Gamrot when he injured himself and suffered a second straight defeat and was out for 2 years. Like, it's not his fault in that regard. But this is more about, hey, let's see this fight that was good the first time, even though no one really asked for it. Let's see it a second time. We will learn something new. Can Fiziev bounce back from his setbacks? Can Gaethje find one more run? You know what the UFC likes to do with these aging names that are lingering. You lose a big fight, they don't put you out of the top 15. They, you know, I mean, I just want to let people know Kamaru Usman's still ranked at welterweight in the top 5, even though he hasn't fought there in 3 years. Okay, so Gaethje being ranked where he is might not make a ton of sense, but he has the most to gain, in my opinion, with a win here, whether it be a type of BMF showcase fight or him lingering around this larger lightweight title picture. Yeah, it'll be an action fight. We'll like it, right? We'll like it. But
I think we'll like it. I mean, it's probably one of Gaethje's last fights, and if Fiziev goes out there and knocks him out cold, could be his last fight. So potentially we'd like to see Gaethje go out on a different note against a different fighter, but it'll be a great fight nevertheless. First fight, Fiziev, lots of success at the start of the fight. Second round, cops an eye poke, kind of slows down a little. Third round, Justin Gaethje starts utilizing uppercuts, jabs. Fiziev is kind of like ducking down with the Muay Thai sort of combos and is copping tons of shots, in the fight ends up losing the fight. But early on in the fight was kind of almost picking Justin Gaethje apart in a lot of ways, and really delivering crazy combinations and kind of startled Justin Gaethje a little bit. This is another 3-rounder, BC. Who do you think wins it if you had to pick it right now?
If I have to pick it right now, I believe Fiziev is young enough, hungry enough, coming off of a defeat. People have stopped talking about him in this divisional rankings system. I think it's his fight to lose. Gaethje is 36. We know what he brings to the table, but how about that loss to Holloway? I thought that what Gaethje did in beating Fiziev was in some ways like his last stand. And what I mean by that was he relied on veteran tactics, right? He figured out how to, okay, I can't run through this guy right now. I can't break his will, but let me be a veteran, adjust. Heck, he scored his first takedown as a professional, right? In that fight. I mean, it's insane giving his wrestling background. And he figured out how to win. He kept pace, and then he came out there and shocked us all in that BMF rematch against Poirier, got the head kick KO. But in hindsight, was he really reformed? Was he really recharged? What does it look like now, a year after that Poirier win, when he gets knocked out cold by Holloway and then sits out another year? So I've got to like Fiziev at this point to not succumb to the things he did in the first fight with Gaethje. To you know, how much did that eye poke play a role? There's a lot of things to talk about here. I still like him to win it. When it was Hooker, oddly enough, I was kind of leaning Gaethje because I felt like Hooker, which he loves to do, right? Get in there and bite off more than he can chew and just leave it all in the cage. I wondered if that could lead to a downfall. I'm wondering if we see a more tactical but still explosive performance here from Fiziev. And one comment from Gaethje of late that I don't necessarily love is he's talking openly about the adjustments he made from when he first came to the UFC and was that walk into oncoming traffic with your hands down, all action brawler. We know what happened under Trevor Whitman. He sharpened up. He's put in just enough craft without sacrificing the caveman instincts, and he was an absolutely legitimate interim title holder and title contender who may or may not, by the way, have been one leg kick away from sending Khabib to peril. Somebody has to say this out loud, okay? He may have been one more leg calf kick away from taking over in that fight. But that fight was a long time ago. So when he's coming out now and saying, you know what, I just want to get back to my old ways. I just want to get in there and brawl and bang. I wonder if he'll regret that against Fiziev, who's coming in here with so much hunger and motivation to make up for lost time and prove himself. Either way, like we said, I'll still enjoy it. I'm still ready. I'm still focused on it coming into this weekend.
Hey, listen, John Cena's a bad guy. Maybe Justin Gaethje shoots for a takedown. Then the whole world and takes down Fiziev, puts him down on the ground, submits him. And this new version of Justin Gaethje's live. I only say that because I was watching the BTS footage from the stoppage with Max Holloway. And man, Justin Gaethje was bad on the ground. Like,
did you see that overhead view that they just recently released where he just fell face first down? Wow.
Like, this is something that, like, something happens to someone, you know, you're like, man, that guy was never the same again. And we know in sports, man, even the World Series of fighting stuff with him and Palomino, like, this guy's copped so much damage. So I wonder how durable he's going to be. In the first fight, Fiziev dropped a bunch of shots on him, a head kick, I think a straight shot, and that wobbled him a little bit. Now you're going to have your chin with you because Fiziev is coming for you. Just quickly, BC, before we move on from 155, who's getting the next title shot, do you think?
Ilia Topuria.
You think they're going to do it? They're going to. But he hasn't had any fights at 155.
I know that. And I know he's recently went from I'd be willing to take a tune-up fight to now I only want to fight for the title right away. I've deserved it. I just think that, look, the UFC is struggling to make Jones versus Aspinall right now, it appears, right? No word out there. Aspinall just put out a video on a train yesterday kind of being like, I don't even know what the story is. Is Jon going to retire? When you've got opportunities in front of you, sometimes that you didn't expect to make a super fight, and when those super fights involve the number 1 and 2 pound for pound fighters in the world, like when it was Volkanovski versus Makhachev, and I thought they made the right move by making it. And because that first fight was so close, I don't think it was an awful move for them to schedule the rematch in the circumstances they did, even though I think maybe we regret that for Volkanovski and taking it in those situations and the way it ended for him. But this is a super, super fight, in my opinion. These are the two best fighters in the world. These are like looking like generational fighters. And you've got a guy in Topuria who's not just flirting with champ opportunities. He willingly vacated the other belt to tell you, I did what I did there. I'm done there. I'm going in this direction. I don't think Makhachev's going to be at 55 long. Usman Nurmagomedov, his teammate, is coming eventually, right? There's been talks and plans for him to move up, if not welterweight, even middleweight at 33 right now, in still his absolute prime, to try to maximize the opportunities in front of him. But before he goes and tries that, right? And I think he's got to also wait for the result of Bilal Muhammad's situation, because they don't want to fight each other. They've had a lot of time in camp, Islam and Bilal, so I understand that. But the window is right in front of us. And the breeze is beautiful. Matchmakers, open it up. Pay whatever you need to. In this TKO era of more glitz and glamour than substance at times, in watered down matchmaking, big events still matter. Big main events still matter. There's very few fights that are bigger than this. And, we all do the new year, the calendar turn. What fights do we want to see the most? When I did that same ranking on Morning Combat, I had this fight at number 1. I think Topuria, is the goods. Maybe I'm not ready to move in with him like Luke Thomas is, but I'm telling you that the first thing you need to see when somebody gets to that level is how great can they actually be. This is the fight that answers that. And I don't want to hear, it's another smaller guy moving up to fight Islam. It's another number 2 pound for pound in the world moving up to fight it. You know what I mean? Like the best should fight the best consistently.
Yeah, it's the Conor McGregor rivalry that Islam's always been missing, right? Coming towards the end of his run at 155, but transferring that popularity over to his run at 170. Just be a shame not to see it happen, but it's also would be a shame to see the one guy that deserves to move up a division and fight for another belt never do it. Well, you have like Ilia Topuria just vacate his belt after one defense and move up to 155. A world where Islam Makhachev potentially never fights at 170 because he retires before that window closes. would be a sad world to live in, wouldn't it be?
It really wouldn't. How about the ongoing, I don't want to say feud, but Dagestani wrestling versus Georgian wrestling, right? Marab versus Umar was recently a thing. Ilia chimed in, like, this is sellable, right? We don't need Conor versus Habib anymore as the main storyline surrounding, like, what's let's make some big business here. This is becoming a big business storyline here, and the rise of Georgian MMA. So, I mean, I know Spain also claims Taporia, and he was born in Germany and in the Luke Thomas household. They're actively trying to claim him, believe me. But this is still a can't miss opportunity. And even for people that say like Islam deserves something different, something bigger. What else is there? Something different, something bigger, right? Outside of fighting, moving up 2 weight classes and fighting DDP, which he said he would a few times. This is the fight. Come on, this is the fight.
This is bigger than, even if he does fight for a belt up the top against JDM, for example, this is like 25 times bigger than the JDM fight. And you can do that fight afterwards anyway. And by the way, I understand people claiming things, Australia's been claiming Russell Crowe now for years when he's actually from New Zealand.
Yes.
So I understand where these people are coming from. We're just trying to hang on to whatever we can.
Well, who claims Whitaker? Who claims Whitaker ultimately?
Where Australia claims Whitaker.
Okay.
He's born here, but he's Maori and he's from New Zealand. I think his heritage is from New Zealand. We've got a lot of Kiwis that we claim over here. Also, pavlova, which is a delicious dessert that I'll treat you to if you ever come to Australia.
Please.
We claim that, and also Lamington.
Where are you in Australia?
In Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I've got a room waiting for you, BC, with a bed made up.
Oh, this is
so
great.
We're ready to go. So we're going to save some cash. Before you come over here and spend the night with me, let me ask you this, man. Main event, Ankalaev and Pereira. People are kind of breaking this thing down like Ankalaev is some wrestling machine that, shoots in for 100 takedowns and, it is always controlling guys on the ground. Then you look at his statistics and the guy like averages 1 takedown per 15 minutes, maybe even a little bit less, like 0.9. When I spoke to his manager, Ali, early on, he mentioned, hey, I think Ankalaev's going to go out there and knock Pereira out. But that's not something we've seen people do outside of a man by name Israel Adesanya. Is this a possibility, BC? I mean, Khalil Roundtree tried his best. Is it possible to stop an Alex Pereira at 205 and go in with a game plan like that?
It is certainly possible. I mean, anything's possible at the highest level of the UFC, where it's so hard to go on the type of runs that Poaton's currently on, obviously, and that run isn't without the blemish you just mentioned, one of the most spectacular comeback knockouts from one fight to another we've ever seen there from Adesanya. But you are right. Look, I've been the guy saying forever, right? When they passed over Ankalaev to slip in the Roundtree fight, when blah, blah, blah. I've been the guy saying forever that, like, make this matchup, because on paper, Ankalaev represents the toughest style matchup available. I still think that's true, even if my CBS Sports colleague, Brent Brookhouse, is always in my ear with the same things you're mentioning of, for this supposed wrestler, where are the takedowns? I see other people posting videos and stats regarding his takedown defense, which isn't super, super top level. But when you hear Ankalaev talk, he's been talking about, I'm just going to take you down at will. And you would think that should be a monster part of his strategy, even with, Pereira's really keeping himself off of the one weakness of his game. It's been incredible. Yes, he's fought mostly strikers. Yes, of course. But if he was so easy to be exposed, he would have been exposed already in these categories. The way that he is taken to not just mixed martial arts, but I want to say grappling, not that we see him going out there submitting people, but again, we don't see people taking advantage of him in these categories at will like this. It's a testament to his ability to learn and adapt, him being an all-time great, and his great coach and teammate, Glover Teixeira, for sure. There's this other half of Ankalaev, though, that doesn't make it hard. It's a rough thing to say out loud because we respect these fighters so much. But, on Morning Combat, we sometimes have all donk teams and these fighters that kind of, quote unquote, donk themselves into losses, making tough strategic decisions, taking their eye off on the ball. Ankalaev sometimes has donk moments, and you can't have that against Pereira. He will, he'll wait for that one mistake and fill that gap and the fight's over. So you gotta, in my opinion, still favor Pereira. And even if you told me I could see the future and Ankalaev is going to come in with the perfect, well-rounded strategy, 100% wrestling, or, hey, he's going to think I'm going to wrestle, let me come in striking and let me come in to finish him. anything can happen for sure. But this run that Poaton's on is just ridiculous, and it's not by accident. He stands right in front of you, right in the pocket, doesn't get lit up, can end the fight at any time. I'm still backing the champion, but this fight needs to happen, and I hope for entertainment and educational purposes, he needs to be really challenged in his takedown defense, because we have to see what happens if Ankalaev can get on top of him, if he can pull on that gas tank, if he can make it uncomfortable. Because outside of those couple early rounds where Roundtree surprised us and, was outworking Pereira and took a lead on the scorecards, and was like, damn, what's going on here? Like, Pereira's often, with the exception of that fight in the first Adesanya fight, like, he controls the terms of his fights. And you're in his living room, and you can't, you better make sure you don't spill that glass of water or wine on his white leather couch, right? You'd be thrown out of there, KO. So I love it. I love that we're going to see this. This fight needs to happen. It's huge. There's legitimate threats to the great reign of Poatan, and I can't wait to see how he figures out how to get out of it. And maybe, if I'm giving you my prediction right now, still gets his hand raised no matter what.
Dude, Ankalaev fighting through Ramadan, not eating, not drinking, and then you got to go and potentially wrestle a guy down like Pereira, who's not, the greatest wrestler in the world, but, to be able to wrestle all those rounds, take the shots. I mean, all respect to him. I spoke to Dan Hardy about it, and Dan did bring up a good point where it's like, hey, maybe mentally it gives him a bit of an edge. I'm doing this through Ramadan. I'm showing people I can do it. But physically, you got to wonder what his body's going to be doing in the end of that third round, when he's got to go for another takedown or potentially lose, because Poatan is punching him and kicking him and moving forward like the Terminator. Let me ask you this, man. What's on tap for the winner here? Because we saw Jon Jones doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. Is Alex Pereira throwing himself into the conversation against Tom Aspinall here with a win or even a loss this weekend?
I think either way, because of his age, because of how smart he has been to capitalize on opportunities, right? Gets knocked out by Adesanya in their rematch. Yeah, F it. I'll go to lightweight and, knock off the top two guys, win the championship. And here we are. It's such a blessed, special, amazing run. The holy grail, I call it, of MMA, the attempt, no disrespect to Malakin in one championship, who technically with a major promotion did become a 3-division champion, but that asterisk needs to be said of the way they do rehydration and the fact that, when he's fighting at 205 is not really 205. So you know what I'm saying? The holy grail, the unreachable feat, in my opinion, is 3-division champion in UFC. Always thought it was going to be Conor. Other guys seemed close, like they could. I mean, we were already trying to put that crown on Adesanya's head when he challenged Blachowicz that time and was talking trash simultaneously on Twitter to Jon Jones. But it's achievable for Pereira, and especially if Jon Jones retires or gives up the belt and doesn't take the Aspinall fight. We are at a very, very low point in heavyweight history that's comparable with the other low points, meaning lack of depth, which is systemic across the heavyweight division in some ways in both combat sports, although boxing is undergoing the tail end right now of what I think has been a heavyweight renaissance period dating back to 2015. But like outside of the 1970s and 1990s in boxing, it's like you can't really name another great heavyweight era because it's hard to have that many great heavyweights at one time. UFC has been up and down. We've had some good periods, a lot of star power maybe on top right now. But if you can't get Ngannou to come back and cross the street, or if you're unwilling, Cyril Gane still offers something. But if Jon Jones won't do it, Cyril Gane will. And then that takes away one contender. And then you're kind of out of big fight opportunities after that for Aspinall. So, yes, Pereira's cleaned out this division. This is the final boss in the video game stylistically. He gets through this. He's going to want to maximize his opportunities. I mean, he's got Alexander Usyk openly saying, I want to fight you in an era when Turki Al-Sheikh can just snap his fingers and make it work, and probably could call up Dana White and Ari Emanuel at TKO and be like, hey, for our new venture where we're taking over the combat world, why don't we take these two big stars and put them together, right? Like it might happen. So yes, if Pereira survives and advances here, we know what he's made of. We know the greatness. We know that at kickboxing he's fought in this division in heavyweight before. So it makes sense. No one's going to favor him most likely against Aspinall, given, Tom's quickness, his size and all that. But that's a fight you have to friggin' see. how much longer can Pereira stay on top, right? He's got to maximize these opportunities. He did that, of course, last year. I don't know how you finish runner-up and fighter of the year when you win 3 fights in 173 days or whatever it was like he did. It happened because Topuria was that great. But yeah, Pereira needs to be the first one to really go after that unclimbable mountain. And he's got a puncher's chance to do it. He really, really does, especially if he makes the decision to move to heavyweight full time so he can start to change his body and do it the right way. This is going to be a big storyline. Would it be bigger than Jones Aspinall? No, but it's not going to be small. If he goes up to heavyweight and challenges for whoever has the belt, I expect it to be Aspinall, of course. If it's Jon Jones, good Lord, that's the biggest fight you can make in the sport, maybe. Either way, Poetan's coming to that heavyweight division.
All right, guys, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, MANSCAPED, who make this podcast possible. I'm, of course, talking about the Chairman Plus, the electric foil shaver by MANSCAPED, placing the power of a barber-quality shave in the palm of your hand. Whether you're suiting up for the boardroom, getting ready for a date, or setting the stage for cuffing season, the Chairman Plus delivers professional-grade performance tailored to your style. It's luxury reinvented for the modern man who demands more. Ready to step up? Why not join the trusted movement? Over 12 million men. Visit manscaped.com now. Use the code word submission. Get 20% off and free shipping now. And you keep this podcast going. You support this show and you support yourself. Just quickly, what makes the Chairman Plus stand out? Well, it's all about versatility and precision. It comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. Uses 3-blade foil for a close, smooth shave. Has skin-safe technology to help reduce razor burn. And of course, the Chairman Plus is waterproof, so it lets you shave right in the shower. And by the way, how about this? 60 minutes of runtime on a single charge, so you're sorted no matter where you go. Manscaped also has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so why not try it risk-free? Use the code word submission. 20% off and free shipping today. Risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. Manscaped keeps the show alive and keeps your dating life and your smoothness alive too. Jump on Manscaped right now. Yeah, I just feel bad for Tom Aspinall, man. I want to see the guy get a decent fight. And by the way, butterfly effect from him moving on over is, listen to this, without Alex Pereira and Ankalaev, respectively as the champion potentially after this weekend, the 205 division, the top of it looks like Yuri, Yan, Jamal, Rakic, Olberg, Roundtree, Krylov, Ozdemir, Walker.
Yeah.
Rough times for 205 as we sort of take the juice out of it and put it back into the heavyweight division in the hopes to make that float. But
the only thing I think that it's a one fight thing, but what if DDP tried to dare to be great and moved up to 205 and fought Pereira, who, remember, Pereira like a year ago was like, I'll go back down to middleweight to fight you. That could be the only fight that could delay this, or that could be a consolation prize if he can't make other fights, right?
Great point, man. And then he's just got to get through the Khamzat situation first. But if he goes through Khamzat, megastar, right? And then you got a megastar going up against Pereira. Just quickly, man, before we wrap up, this Jon Jones situation. If Jon doesn't actually come back, doesn't actually fight Aspinall, is just like, I'm all good making weird movies over here. What does that do to his legacy? In your opinion, it feels like fans out there are getting fed up with the situation. We got told a bunch of times by Dana White. We got told a bunch of times that things are moving in a positive direction. Then Tom Aspinall's on a train, seemingly not going to this matchup with Jon Jones, seemingly breaking all of our hearts. How much more of this can we take, BC?
I just want it to be over with. Right? I just want to have a decision. It's sort of like where we were the last couple of years of, is Conor coming back this year or is it the end of next year? I just want to see him. And now we're like, I just want this conversation to end. We're getting there with Jon, unfortunately. Will this follow him if he gives up the belt or retires? Yeah. And I think it should. It won't change that he's the GOAT. I thought he was the GOAT before he won the heavyweight championship, even though the circumstances of him winning it and the guy he beat and all that, is it as impressive as it should be? Maybe not. I mean, the first defense after sitting out a full year was old man Stipe. There's a lot of issues here. Still, he climbed the mountain and became the 2 division champion. So I don't think the GOAT thing is an argument, and I don't think you can change that. But it would follow him, I think, because of how long this soap opera has taken place, because you can't ignore that he also sat out 3 years during the exact period where Francis Ngannou was on top. And it seems like Ngannou was more than willing to make that fight, and so was UFC. I mean, we remember what Dana White was saying in terms of his trash talking to Jon at that point, only to completely flip his tone in terms when Ngannou left and now Jones is here. And it's not like some things like this haven't happened before. Riddick Bowe is a great example in boxing, getting knocked out by Lennox Lewis in the gold medal fight in 1988 at the Olympics, then famously putting the WBC title in the trash to avoid fighting him in a professional unification. Riddick Bowe's still in the Hall of Fame, even though I think that appointment is a little bit questionable given how quickly his prime faded. But like, we talk about that garbage pail situation as like almost a joke now. We don't say first sentence, Riddick Bowe, Hall of Famer who ducked Lennox Lewis, right? Same thing about Lennox Lewis. His final fight of his career, he takes on last-minute replacement Vitaly Klitschko, has this incredible war that's insane, takes damage, gets the win by TKO and retires rather than doing a rematch. In the aftermath, we're like, yeah, boxing probably deserved him coming back, but he achieved so much. We're not going to take that away from him. The Jones situation is different because it's a soap opera that's spread out for so long. And even though there are parts of the story where you can't hate on Jones, if anyone deserves a one-night payday of like 20 million generational money, the type of payday that UFC fighters don't get, it is Jon Jones. But Jon Jones is also, for very good reasons, not overly beloved. His accomplishments are beloved. When he fights, we want to see greatness, so we suspend certain levels of our opinion of him. But he's been a consistent train wreck and consistently in the police blotter and, may or may not have been ducking Ngannou for that stretch. For him to come back, win the championship, be allowed to sit out a year only to fight Stipe unnecessarily, and then take us through this extended soap opera without fighting Aspinall in the end, it's a major, major duck. Does it matter if we still consider him the GOAT? Like, does it matter in reality? Probably not. Will generations from now, they still talk about it? That's the thing you always have to debate and argue. Do new fans even care about history? I don't know. But this era of journalists and fans will hashtag never forget. And I think they have reason to. Jon Jones is so great that he almost owes it to us to try to do this, if that makes any sense. And if he was going to retire to retain the unbeaten record, more or less, outside of that DQ to Hamill, then do that after you beat Gane, right? Or do that the night you beat Stipe. Would he have been booed in that arena? And would we have been ripping him on every podcast? Yes. But at least he would have made a cemented decision in that moment of, hey, I don't actually need Aspinall, so I'm just going to go on my own thing. The way that he's been doing it with the constant stop-start, say one thing, say another. Yeah, dude, yeah. You're holding up business. You're holding up a division. I think you deserve to be paid, but at some point, it's shit or get off the pot. We're there, John. I'm sick of this already. I don't even really want this fight anymore because we've had to jump through so many hoops to even consider it. I will blame UFC, and to some degree, if they didn't pony up enough money in this era with Turkey around and all that, but whatever. I mean, that's where you're at, right?
Aspinall is getting to the point where he's starting to be Michael Chandler's situation when he's missing he's going to miss a year out of his prime. So his last fight was in July. Let's get this guy going. Let's get him back in the movement. And Jon Jones, please stop hurting us. Stop leading us on. We can't take this anymore. End this relationship. GSP did it. We were able to come back. We're able to be whole again. Let us be whole one more time as we finish up. Brian Campbell, Morning Combat. You got some big interviews this week for UFC 313. Fiziev, one of them. What can people look out for on your channel and on Morning Combat BC?
Yeah, you can check me out on YouTube at the Brian Campbell Experience. I'll be chatting with Fiziev, Ankalaev. Have a couple good shows for you. My live Wednesday Ramble live chat at 4 p.m. Eastern. Check me out on Morning Combat this Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, giving you nothing but a UFC 313 preview with a couple shots of Cuervo and special.
Is this the pregame? I love the pregames. They're my favorite, brother. They're my favorite.
You'll be seeing the
best segment in MMA, bro. Highly underrated. If you guys haven't watched a pregame yet, there is only one place to do that, and that is with my friend BBC Big Brian Campbell. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining me on Submission Radio.
Thank you.